Okay then, so let's get on with our activity. So, as you know, we're doing a focus on Shepard Fairey and his portraits, and this is the artwork that we are going to create or recreate. Earlier I showed you my papers and how I made them. I'll just show you again. This is what you're going to find in your pack. You will have a big sheet which will be your background, this one here. And then you'll have a selection of 3 colours, very Shepard Fairey. You can see that, you know, similar tones. He likes to use a lot of black, white and red in his artworks. So that's why we've got those colours. So looking at Shepard Fairey's artwork, you know, we can see that he is heavily reliant on pattern, and there's some really nice stark contrast in that face. You can go on to make your own stencils after doing this technique as well, because just painting this very stark contrasted face enables you to see how stencils are cut. So it's a really good lead on into getting more familiar with stencils and street art. This is the outcome that we're going to be doing. So you can see this is my piece, and there's my pattern at the back, which is Grandma's Table Protector, which always makes me laugh. All of these are the table protector patterns here that you can see. And then here, this pattern here that's all florally and a bit Regency, that is the wallpaper. So what have I done? I've cut bits of collage paper. You can see there, that's quite handy how that lifts up, and I've not glued it down properly, but it's just been stuck down. And everywhere else around here is paint, so just regular poster paint or acrylic is fine. And I've cut out my collage pieces to suit my purposes. So really this is quite the bit where you've got to do the painting and that kind of work. Down here is where you're going to do your collage. So right, what do we need? So just put this to one side. What you're going to need is you're going to need the outline of the face. Now that's ready traced for you, so it's been traced out, but what you've got to do is be able to transfer that onto your background. So what you're going to need is a piece of tracing paper, and you're going to need this stuff here, which is, it says on there, typewriter carbon paper. Back in the day when secretaries used to do typing, they put a roll of this into the typewriter and a couple of sheets of paper, and that enabled them to make duplicates. So it's also known as duplicate paper. The ink is on this side, that side is the logo, and that's the bit that hasn't got the ink on really, obviously. So I'm going to show you step by step how to do this technique. And the first thing that we're going to do is just put that to one side. So we've got the outline shape. You can see there that I've written front, which means that that is the side that you need to be tracing from. It's a symmetrical image, isn't it? But if we don't take into account the way that this is set out, you're going to get confused when you flip and rotate. So I always write front on, just so that I know that that's the side that I'm working with. Then you need some masking tape, and you're going to attach 2 tabs to the top. We do it in tabs so that you can lift up and see how you're doing. Excuse me. Next, you're going to need a few other bits and pieces of equipment. You're going to need a pair of scissors. You're going to need a couple of small brushes, something to mix your paint on. Here I've got black acrylic, but you could use tempera, that would be fine. You need a glue stick for sticking down your collage, and you need a pencil and a biro. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my pencil and I'm going to trace this. Okay, I'm just going to do a time lapse for you to show that happening. So here I am with my finished tracing. I've gone over the top in pencil. I've written in pencil on the front of the tracing paper, so I know that I'm the right way around all the time. So what do I do now? I take my carbon paper and I take my background. Okay, here it's like making a sandwich. So I'm going to lift up the front of the tracing. The first thing I'm going to put down is my background, and then I'm going to take my carbon paper. That's the ink side, so that needs to face down. If you like, you can pop a little bit of tape there just to make sure that it stays in place, and then I'm going to flatten that down and I'm ready to go. What I need now is not a pencil but a biro, and the reason I'm using a coloured biro is so that I can see where my lines go. If I went over with pencil, then I'd be struggling to see which lines I've gone over, but if I use a biro which has got a really nice hard end, this is going to come out really strong, a strong image on this quite heavily patterned background. I'll be able to see it. It's going to come out black, the same colour as the carbon paper though, but for the purposes of being able to see where I have drawn, I'm using a red biro. So I will time lapse this bit so you can see it speeded up. So now I'm ready to do the painting. What you are going to need as you work is the reference image. So you will have a photocopy of this so that you can see the details on the face that you need to paint. If I hold this up, you can make out where you have to paint, but only just, can't you? It is a nice strong bold line, but I need that reference image just to make sure that I'm on the right track. Now, what I've done here is I've mixed a little bit of water in with my paint so that it's nice and malleable and it'll slide over the paper. And I've got my brushes, and I've just realised that you probably need a bigger brush as well to do the background. So a couple of small brushes, a big brush to fill in the background, because you can see where we've got to go. So all of this here is painted, all of the face is painted, and this bit here is collage. Oh, and there's a little bit of paint there too. Okay, so I'm going to start with the face, and I'm going to do this real time so that you can see what will happen. So I've got my finished brush here. I'm just going to make sure that it's loaded nicely but not overloaded. I've got my reference image here, and you can see here that there's a little light in the eye. I'm going to ignore that. I'm not going to try and go around it. I'm just going to cover it in, because that is a little bit of white paint that's gone on afterwards. So if I now take my nice wet paint with my thin brush, I'm just going over the lines. And I'm going around the edge. There you go. I'm going over that highlight. And I can see here that there's an island. I've got to go around. So now I'll join that up. Dip back in again. Can send you slightly crazy, this pattern. It's quite intense, but it's better that it's in black than it being in red. So now I'm up to this edge here, so where my finger is, and I can paint that through. And now I can go up here. So the paint's really going on quite nicely. I can tidy up as I go, but really I just want to block in and see where my paint needs to be applied. I'm using these kind of marks to do these textures on this side of the shadow of the face, and then I can fill in. And then we've got this like really nice rickety rackety pattern of the hijab. So just going over those. And oh yes, fill in that bit there. And then I'll go back down here. So you can see there is the eye, that little curve there. I've got a little flick coming in there, and the inside of the nose there. And now I'm going to carry on down. I'll try and do half of the face for you, so at least you can see how this materialises. So now I'm down here. There you go, that's a top tip if you've ever seen one, isn't it? Put your finger on your reference picture and follow it. Because if you are not taking care with where you are painting, you will come a cropper. It's hard to believe actually that this actually turns out okay. When you're painting it, you feel like it's all going wrong, but you've got to trust your instincts here. Now I'm leaving that little bit there because that's the highlight on the bottom lip. It's just a little space there. Now I'm going to do the nose. This paint's really quite nice because it's runny. Now I'll do these little patterns. They're just kind of geometric, abstract shapes, but they all make sense when it's finished. And a little bit of a fold in the scarf. And there's another bit here. So what do you think of the show so far? A little bit more pattern up here. See if I can get that half done. And then I have this area. And now this is where you've got to focus, because you know that this is black, so you're painting up against this line. So I'm using the small brush to do the outline of the line, and then I will fill in with the background. Now my paint comes in a little bit here, so I'm going into that little crevice and back out again, and then follow that line there. Pop that down. Now I can get in there with my big brush, and it's probably best, you know, to leave the background till the end, because you'll find that the paint is going to be wet in this background for a while. But it does help you see where you're going, and you can appreciate what the outcome is going to be. Forgive my messiness here. First rule of art club is not to paint on your background. Right, okay, so that is what you should have. So I'm going to now time lapse this so that you can then see me finish the whole piece off and add all of the black detail and paint on this side. Okay. So that's finished. She's kind of getting there, nearly dry, but there's things that I really need to do to give her a little bit of life. Small brush is what you're going to need, and you're going to put a little tiny highlight in each pupil. Okay, this is the thing that makes, just makes anything, any portrait look more effective. So I've got a tiny little bit of paint. Ooh, can you see that on my brush? So let me sit down, and I'm just going to do a dot. It's not quite coming out, just bear with me. Do a dot, highlight. I've got to put it in the same place in each eye. So you can see there that looks a little bit more lifelike. I know it's tiny, but it really does make the difference. So that is all the painting done. So the next thing that we've got to do is start cutting out our patterns from our papers. Okay, so this is what we're going to move on to next. Okay, right, we're at the point now where we need to decide where the patterns go, okay, and decide which ones go where. Looking at this, I think it's really nice how that red is down at the bottom. So I think that I might, out of the three, use the red down here. I think for the bib part I'm going to use the brown, and then for the circle in the middle I'm going to use this white and black pattern. I'm just going to put that to one side and that one to one side, because what you need now is your tracing. So you need the tracing back with you, and the way that you trace these patterns sounds tricky, but it isn't really. Okay, I'm just going to move that to one side. Now we want this pattern to go where the bib is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put pencil on the front of the tracing. Okay, and if I put a thick line of pencil on the front of it, just to get that basic pentagon shape. There we go. You can see it's been done quite roughly and quite thickly. If I now lay my paper pattern side up, I will get it cut the right way out. But I need to flip it. Get my biro or my pencil, it doesn't really matter. I don't want to waste this pattern, so I don't want to put it in the middle. I'm just going to put it up to the edge. And if I now, gone a little bit over, if I now apply pressure, then this will transfer the graphite to the back of the sheet. Look, there we go. So now I get my scissors, trim. So just remember, pencil goes on the front of the tracing paper. There's the shape. And now I can lay that there and it fits. So glue stick. Put plenty of glue on this, folks. We don't want it lifting up. And put the lid back on. And there it goes in place. It's lifting a bit there, so we'll whack a bit more on. If you are worried about smudging things, you can always put a bit of paper down and rub like this to make things stick, you know, especially if your hands are dirty. You can use that to make things stick down a bit better. So that's the first one. And now we want to look at the other patterns. So same principle as before, but we've got an issue here, haven't we? Because we've got black paper, so how are we going to see the pencil line? It might be easier to see the pencil line on the reverse than the front. So get that out of the way. I'm going to put pencil here just on these lines. I just want 2 triangles. So there you go, fit pencil. Figure out which way I want it. I suppose I could do it from there, couldn't I? So now if I flip over and if I draw that baseline there, go over with my pen and the other side. I can see the pencil mark. Hurrah! Okay, and I can see that line down there that I've got to cut down. So that bit comes off first, and then that angle. This bit's waste. And there are my triangles, cut to fit, and the right way up as well. Okay, so we'll get them in place. Plenty of glue right up those edges. Get it in position. And in position again. Looking good. Okay, so that's that bit done. Now all we've got left is the circle, and you see why it's important now to write the front on, so you know which way that you're cutting. So I'm going to do this. You could use a compass if you really wanted a neat job doing, but you might find that you have to cut the circle in the middle out with a craft knife. So there's my thick heavy line. That's the way round it's going, facing upwards. So if now I flip that over, I can get my circle shape. And the centre circle. Okay, I can see that well. Okay, so now we cut out the circle. These are big scissors. I'm going to try and do how I would cut it out. Just fold it in half and just cut a semicircle in the middle. Easiest way to do it, rather than faffing around with craft knives. And then that's going to go there. The circle pattern has gone on, it's been stuck down. I'm just looking at my original now and thinking, what else can I do? Because there is one extra thing that I need to do, and that was putting this little bit of pattern here. And yeah, it just kind of finishes it off and gives a little bit more tighter detail there. So I'm just going to get my brush, and I've got a bit of runny paint here, and I'm going to just do these dashes. I just think I'll have 2 rows. So just a little bit of extra hand painting, because we know how Shepard Fairey is so pattern orientated. We can go crazy with this. And all the things that my students have done with this technique, and you know, the way that they've engaged with Shepard Fairey, is that they are able to then go on and do some stenciling from this technique, because you can appreciate now exactly how a stencil functions between the contrast between black and white. And then you can go off and do lots of weird and wonderful things with graffiti style art. I think that looks okay. I think that works quite nice. I'm happy with that. So there she is, Shepard Fairey, Arab woman, completed.